Welcome to Common Ground, an inside look at the Suffolk County. I am your host, Fernandito Osa. Today, my guest will be John Dolan, supervisor of the Men's Treatment Program and Social Services. Welcome, John.
Hello, Fernando.
John, I'd like to begin by asking you when you first started working in the department.
I started in 1996 in January, and I worked 8 years over at Nashua Street, and I've been over here the balance of the time over at South Bay. I worked in the addiction field for close to 30 years now, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm supervising the men's treatment therapeutic community over here at South Bay.
And then with that, I'll ask you too, can you talk a little bit about the changes since your early days in the department?
Oh, sure, I could talk forever on this. When I first started, the primary addiction that we dealt with was alcohol. And that obviously has morphed into cocaine and eventually crack. And now we see opiates, and I've never seen a drug more highly addictive and causing more havoc than the opiate crisis we have now. And I've been through the majority of the major problems that we've had around addictions. Never seen anything like it.
There is a popular drug right now, Fentanyl, what is it called? The
methamphetamine?
No,
yeah.
The other one. There's another one that's
crystal meth.
I can't remember the name, but it's a one that's really sticking out right now. That's out there.
Oh, the fentanyl.
The fentanyl, yes.
Fentanyl is actually a synthetic heroin that's used to enhance the effect of the heroin that's sold on the street. The problem with it is how powerful it is, and the ability to not only overdose but kill people.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's probably a powerful drug. It's not meant for casual or recreational use. Never mind sold with heroin. Just a few small crystals can kill somebody.
Yeah, I heard a comment on that drug. Something with the fact that it was used for tranquilizing horses or something.
Yeah, the carfentanil is that's 100 times more powerful than the heroin itself. The fentanyl is probably around 50% more. They're not made for casual use, or even it's not meant for what it's being used for right now. It's a major painkiller, and it's carfentanil is actually used to euthanize animals.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk a little bit about the department as a whole, the men that that we serve. But I wanted to kind of, since we're talking a little bit about backtracking and talking a little bit about the past, I wanted to kind of entertain the thought about the Latino Recovery that was back in the 2006, 2007, something that, you know, at that time you were you were my supervisor, and I was working there, and we were able to come up with that thought, the idea and the need of serving the Latino population, and where the class was done bilingually, and it really served its purpose. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, it was major. It was primarily brought into effect because none of the staff at that time that was in the recovery unit spoke Spanish, and it was more of a language barrier rather than a cultural one. Addiction is addiction, no matter where you come from, and it cuts through all lines. But the language barrier was always a problem, and the Latino program was started in response to that. And seeing as we have probably around 30 to 35% of our population Spanish speaking, we felt that not only was it a need, but it was a well-deserved program, and it had great success. And the success of that program was, as with most programs, it was spread by the other Latinos. So the job that you did went around the institution better than mail or email could ever do. You know. And they communicate it that way. It's the best. It's the best way. It's the best internet that I know of in prison. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you. So we're talking about some of the drugs in general, some of the ones you've seen along the way, and of course narcotics, alcohol and tobacco, just to name a few. But can you talk a little bit about the horrors of addiction, and so that people can understand what we do to help people in recovery? Yeah.
Okay. You know, our philosophy for years, and I've worked in treatment centers on the outside, detoxes, halfway houses, transition programs. I'm in long-term recovery myself, so I have some experience on that side of the coin. And it always was just to plant the seed. And especially at the jail, what we would do is put out, just put out the fire. And we wouldn't treat them no more, We just send them along to a halfway house or another treatment program. In the prison, we have them for a longer term, and we can do more effective treatment and long-term treatment, and we can get to the causes and conditions that why they're doing it. And the more we, shed light on it, the more it unfolds, and we peel the onion, and we find that a lot of the problems that they have are trauma-based, and there's mental health problems as a result of it. So we're just uncovering problems as we go along, and we're getting them the help that we need. We have a big collaboration with mental health over there, medical, and now we have the harm reduction models that we're that we're working with. So we got a good partnership both inside the prison with people, and we communicate really well with the agencies on the outside. So we're getting the help, and we're getting the training that we need too. As a result of it, we bring these people in and they speak in the unit, and not only do the inmates learn, but more so the staff learns, because the staff's going to be there long after the inmates leave, and they can relay this information to other people. Yeah,
I actually wanted to follow up on that. So if it helps that folks are in recovery as well, folks that come in speaking from their personal experience, but you also, I like the way that you engage as well is the fundamentals. There is Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, the 12 steps, the fellowships, the materials that you provide. There are journals that you have folks to sort of record on a daily basis of what they do, so that they kind of can look back when the day one they came into the unit, and from maybe the time they're being classified to a different unit, or when they're leaving, they can look back of the change and some of the things that they had to change or want to change because of their behaviors. But talk a little bit about some of those things that you do within your treatment unit, because I think they're very fundamental, the skill settings that you're teaching these men.
Okay, I'll take a controversial one, is the methadone treatment. We bring them in, they're right around the corner. They're not only our neighbor, but a lot of the guys are on the methadone treatment programs, and a lot of the homeless people that leave here, which many of them will become for different reasons. That's a real popular program for those people, and they get on this maintenance program. So we decided we were going to bring these people in and talk about it, and we have a little Q&A at the end, and it's not only is it very educating, but also it really raises the awareness about what little we know about different programs. And the inmates get a lot of education around it, and they're making better informed decisions when they leave. Because the other harm reduction models that we talk about, mainly the Vivitrol and the Suboxone, we have them in-house, especially the Vivitrol that we're widely promoting right now.
And John, the Vivitrol is for what?
It's to reduce the craving and the urgings for when people leave. It's a medication that's given a week before they leave and 28 days thereafter. We set up the appointment on the outside for them.
And that helps in alcohol and heroin?
It helps with alcohol and
heroin?
Opiates.
Opiates?
Yeah.
Opiates, okay.
So mainly for the opiates, because the opiates are killing people. But we do it for people that are chronic offenders, re-offenders, I say, and having a tough time not only staying clean, but they're in unhealthy behaviors on the outside. So this is a medication that's really makes a person more compliant, because it takes any decision-making out of them. They don't have to show up every day. They're given a shot. So that just covers them for 30 days, and they can now start to work on the other stuff, the underlying causes and conditions. And that's why the therapy is so important, the counseling that comes with it. They're supposed to get the counseling with it, and that's what they get on the inside. And we set them up with a program on the outside where they get the counseling along with the shot. So it depends on them how long they stay on it from that point on.
Good. Addiction effects on family and society. It's huge.
Oh, it's unbelievable. You just have to talk to the parents, of these kids, and the difference between the men and women about how they're treated. You know, the men initially, you know, they get treated like they're victims. You know, my poor son wouldn't do this. My poor son would never do this. I couldn't think of him doing this. It isn't until the second or third time that it hits home that they're not only doing it, they're doing it consistently, and they're getting caught. The women, on the other hand, bring a lot of shame to the family, you know, and as a result, they're more shunned, you know, and so they need more support services. Obviously, they have a lot more trauma than the men, and a lot more issues, you know, and this double standard that we hold for women, you know, that they're supposed to be providers as opposed to men and all that. But the men, they talk about it for the first time while they're in the unit, you know, and it isn't until they start filling up and they start feeling it, you know, that they do something about it. That pain actually brings on action, you know, and it could be a negative and it could be a positive, depends on where they're at. They could get into a fight that night over it. They could think of suicide. But most often, you know, it brings out a positive change, even for that time being. We got to promote that, and we got to help them sustain that, and we got to support that.
And there are times that they might not even know or acknowledge that they have a, you know, substance abuse problem, but it's like you said, when they first begin to talk about it, it's the acknowledgement and the acceptance of beginning the process of healing.
You know, we talk about this quite a bit, and we got a younger population now, and they're in a lot of denial about what their problems are. We got to help them with that, you know. We got to point out some of the things that they may want to take a look at. And over time, they even come to agree that there's not only a problem, that there may be an addiction. A lot of the older guys know that they're addicted. They just can't keep what they have when they get out. They've been clean and sober, or they've been, you know, dry for a period of 18 months sometimes, and within first 48 hours of being released, they pick back up, and they're back on that path, you know. It's hard for them to sustain it, you know, so that's where we got to get them into programs and connect them to the right programs and get them into a program that they're going to buy into, not what I think they should do, but what we both together think is a good idea. And that's the importance of, you know, good discharge planning. And we have one of the best where we are.
Awesome. Can you specifically talk about the current opiates, which we already mentioned a little bit, but I would say that, you know, in that line of what you were saying, it's almost, I remember a line that I used to talk to in the group of the Latino Recovery, where you'd come in, you do, like you said, 18 months or 2.5, and then you for the first time or second time or third time, you are experiencing soberness, you're experiencing waking up normal hours, being able to eat normal, and so forth. And then the moment you leave, within 30 seconds, you just pick up and then you lose it all. Yeah. Is that part of shame it creates, or is that part of guilt, or is it because, when does that craving begin? Is it the anxiety of knowing that they're leaving to it? How does all that mix?
We talk a lot about their feelings when they leave, you know, and we have them share some of their feelings, and by doing so, they don't feel as unique, and they don't feel as alone, you know. Hey, I feel like that too. Then they start talking about it, and the more they talk about it, the more they educate themselves, and the more humble they become. The more humble they become, the more open they become towards learning. You know, they're teachable at that time. And they say, you know, once you're teachable, anything's possible. You know, once you have an open mind, anything's possible. They say, if you have an open mind, a teacher will appear, and it does for different people at different times. So it works that way in the recovery unit.
What is Narcan, and why do we teach our people to use it?
Okay, that's actually what we do a lot of. We teach the Narcan. We have a peer ed program in the prison where we teach the other inmates to teach others. We feel that they have the most credibility in the units, and they have the most credibility in the community. And certainly with their families, they live this life. There's no one better to talk about this than them. And when they talk about it, people listen, because they can't deny that our most powerful asset that we have is actually our graduation, and you've been to many of them, where it isn't what we do, it isn't all the dog and pony stuff, it's their personal stories that have an impact on people. And it's where the agencies on the outside come to see. They want to learn about this. They want to learn about this from the people that do it. The people with the highest possibility of overdosing by 129% of people that leave prison that are incarcerated. That's huge. That's huge. And people that have overdosed before have the highest probability of doing it again because they have like the Superman syndrome that they can't be killed. So the population that we're dealing with is the precise population that not only needs to learn it, but learn how to reverse it. It's a bystander intervention, and we spend a great deal of time on that. We have a big graduation, we make a big deal of it, and this drop that we drop in the water spreads to their families. You know, it spreads to the community that they return to, but most of all, if they ever have to use it, they'll know precisely what steps to take.
Yeah, you do have great partnerships.
Yeah, we do.
I've been able to see that, and the commitment and loyalty that you have there.
And we get updated trainings from the Department of Public Health, Boston Public Health. We got a Latino trainer, Humberto Sanchez. He helps us a great deal with the Latino guys. So it's a great partnership. Not only is it ongoing, but it's fluid, you know. We, as soon as things come out, we know about it, and we're talking about it, and we revamped the curriculum to make the adjustments.
Yeah, that's good, because that was actually my next question, is to talk a little bit positive about some of the things that have happened in recovery. And I know I've seen myself, some of the men who've actually come back and spoken in the reentry panel, who are now, you know, career citizens in the community, you know, have good jobs, working jobs, and that part of it, you know, these are guys that decided to stop using, get cleaned up, get some training, and get a job. And they're working, and now they're productive citizens and with their families. And, you know, and it's the story of those protective folks that are doing the right thing, right?
Yeah.
Talk about a little bit about the some of the things that people with addiction can do to help themselves.
I think the biggest thing they can do to help themselves is show up. And that means making a choice or a decision to come to the recovery unit, whether they come for the good time, to get out of court, you know, or to get out of jail, to do better in court, to get parole, whatever reasons they come, we don't really care, as long as you show up. Once you show up, it's up to us to make sure you get this information. Once you get this information, it's up to you whether you want to do something about it. And if you don't do something about it, obviously, one of the better things that can happen to you is come back, because death is certainly an option. And we lay it all out, and these guys have experienced many of them, so when they talk about it again, they teach each other, you know? And that's one thing that we fostered in there, each one teach one, you know? So we've developed this philosophy over the years, and it works. We're not doing all the work in there, they are. And we've learned, I personally have learned more about opiates than I could learn in a lifetime from these guys in the units. They've taught me an immense amount of about opiates that I never knew, and I've been in this field a long time, and I just didn't know until, you know, I've been talking to these guys, and I've implemented all of this stuff over the years, you know. It all comes back. Well, this guy, remember this guy saying this. I say that to them, and they say something else. Now all of this is starting to, you know, make an impact, you know.
All right, John, as we're coming close to our segment here, I'm going to ask you, what would you like people to think or should know about addiction and recovery that they might not know? Because sometimes we just see it as those people on the corner block, or those people with problems, but what would be something we could...
You know, we've always talked about bringing families in to educate them on that it's a disease. It's the only disease that people apologize for. Think about that. People don't apologize for having diabetes. They don't apologize for having heart failure. They apologize for being an addict, you know? And the stigma with this is alive and well, and that's one thing that we would do to educate the family, and also educate them on, are they really helping a person by taking them back? You know, there's a balance. We've all lost people to this disease, you know. Sometimes you think you're helping them when really you're hurting and enabling them, you know. There's that line, you know. I don't know where it is. I know that just the more that we talk about it, you know, we can better inform families about, you know, what position they should take to take care of themselves, because if they don't, they can't take care of anybody else, you know.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
And that's John Dolan, the supervisor of the men's treatment unit for the social services. That's the time that we have for this segment. Thank you for tuning in to Common Ground.
Bye-bye.
Hi. Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert. Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably gonna turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right?
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him.
Welcome to Common Ground, an inside look at the Suffolk County. I am your host, Fernandito Osa. Today my guest is Cedric Rucker, and he is the PTAC instructor and BRI coordinator, and we'll learn a little bit about what all that means. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Let's begin, Cedric. I want to go back a little bit and to start off this conversation. Back in December of 2011, you were working for the BRI as a case manager. How did you come about to work for the BRI?
You want the long or short version?
Whatever. Just fill me in. Just fill me in.
I was working for an organization in Boston called Youth Options Unlimited. I was working there as a summer, not an intern, but kind of a summer temporary working with young men, just helping them, like it was called a transition employment supervisor. So basically helping young men that may not have had, work experience, trying to help them learn some of the soft skills and what it means to just come to a job every day. And one of the individuals there at Youth Options Unlimited, Mr. Mike Mitchell, he kind of, told me about the Boston Reentry Initiative and just kind of gave that to me and said, is this something that you would be interested in? And of course, me just graduating from school, I was interested in any type of employment, but also something that kind of aligned with my desire to help, young men. And so that's where I got my first experience or my first introduction to them. And through a long interview process, and then finally coming along board in December, I came along with the Boston Reentry Initiative.
And then you do a transition, and you begin with the House of Correction in August 2016, and begin serving as the PTAC instructor. PTAC, what does PTAC stand for?
So PTAC stands for Professional Development Attitudinal Training. So it's a lot, it's a mouthful.
Break it down, what does it mean?
Basically, what my class does is that, one, it helps people learn just some of the professional skills that they need in order to reenter back into the community and to be successful in the community. And when we say professionalism, it's not just in a work environment, but it's also, just in your neighborhoods, in whatever organizations that you belong to, with your family, those things. And then the other part is attitudinal training. And I think that I put a lot of emphasis on the attitude because, all of us at times need an attitude adjustment, so to speak. And so what that does, it kind of helps them. One of my mentors and supervisors, Trucy Allah, he says that it provides a checkup from the neck up. So it basically, gives them an opportunity to have some self-introspection and to look at themselves and to see where they may have been going off road or off path, and how they can come back and be a successful member and a successful contributor to the community.
That sounds great. How long does it run for? How long is the class? A couple of weeks?
Great question. So PTAC runs for it's a 5-week course. It runs from Monday through Thursday. And we have 2 classes. We have one in the morning from 9 to 10. And then right after that, we have a class from 10 to 11. And they both teach the same things. It just depends on what unit that you're.
What's the class size like? I mean, what's the numbers like?
So this past class, my first one I have 13 in the class, and then the other one on the roster I have about 35. So it just depends. So a lot of people come into my class starting from the new man unit. So basically, that's the first time that they can have any type of programming, or the first time they can get good time. And so they sign up for that class in droves. And so they come. So normally, my second class is going to be a lot larger than the first class. But so it can definitely range anywhere from 15 to 35, 40 people in a class.
Good stuff. And for the BRI work, kind of describe a little bit about what the Boston Reentry does. Okay,
so now there's two versions of the Boston Reentry Initiative. When I first started, it was a funded program through a federal grant. And basically what we did is we provided case management services. So it was somebody that was able to just come alongside an individual from when they first started their incarceration at Suffolk County House of Corrections, and we would just be there with them. So we would help them navigate their process. If they were trying to get into school, we would help them get into, to schools. We would provide advocacy, maybe in certain situations. If a person got into an issue that was maybe a little unfair, or something that could be clarified a little bit, we would stand in. We would come in and stand in proxy with them. We would represent our guys if we felt they deserved it. We would represent our guys when they would see parole. We would just go in there and just let them know that they're working with us, and that when they are released, they'll still be working with us, and we'll be connecting them to various resources. And so basically, we just really kind of came alongside. I don't want to say held their hand, but we came in to assist them. And the goal is that maybe in the beginning you would need much more assistance than you would need later on. At some point, you would learn how to walk on your own. You would learn how to navigate just the systems by yourself, and we would step back a little bit.
That sounds good. It's a very mentoring program, and very supportive, and I'm sure there was a lot of resources given out.
Most definitely.
And I'm sure that if we do have returning citizens, I'm sure that's the first thing they want to be part of.
yeah, definitely.
So talk a little bit about the participants of PTAC. Who are they?
So they're anybody.
Like, who are they? Characters and
they're That's a great question. It's many and vast, varied as far as the participant for PTAC. I mean, they're all, of course, incarcerated at Suffolk County House of Correction, but we have some that are young, 19, 20 years old, maybe their first incarceration. They may have been, what they would say in the game for a long time, but they finally got caught up to them, and now, it's their first time. We have individuals that are older, in their 70s, 60s, and just, are kind of tired, trying to hear if they can find something different. We have some guys that basically they just want to get off the unit. They don't really see anything. They may not initially see any benefit in taking the class, but the mere fact that there's some good time that comes along with it and they get off the unit. Then we got the guy that is, been incarcerated, who's been doing 20, 25 years on the installment plan, been coming to jail since they were 20 years old, and now they're 45, and they're tired. And now they're tired of seeing the inside of a prison, and they're hoping to hear something to help them not reoffend, to help them make a better decision the next time they get their freedom.
What would you say the goal of BRI is?
The goal?
The gold.
The goal?
The goal, the final end, the finish line.
In a nutshell, the goal of BRI, the Boston Reentry Initiative, is to have every single one of our clients to be productive members of society. So, if you're a father, you're providing, you're providing not just child support as far as monetarily, but you're providing child support in your presence. We want you to be active in your family, active in your church, your mosque, your synagogue, in whatever organization you belong to. We want you to give back. We want you to be just a productive member of society. But as far as goals and what we consider success, it's different tiers. So we don't expect somebody that's never had a job, that's never been, you know what I'm saying, a citizen, so to speak, as far as following the laws of society. We don't expect them to jump out and to run for Congress, you know, the next day or when they get out. But what our hope is that, you know, all right, if you were incarcerated on armed robbery this time, and it may sound negative, but follow me. If, say, you're incarcerated with armed robbery or selling drugs, you know, this particular bid, our hope is that now, like, you would turn away from that. And if you do get caught up, it's something on a lesser, lighter charge. You know, driving on a suspended. That's not good. It's not something that we want to happen, but it's not promoting violence in the community. It's not, you know, it's not, exactly. It's not a gun. It's not a gun firing in the community. So, I mean, our hope is that in the end goal, they will become citizens, but on their way to becoming full-fledged citizens, they would begin to slowly step away from whatever it is that used to get them bound up, you know, in the street.
Good, good. Some of your day-to-day challenges that you face working with this population? Day-to-day, going to the classrooms, dealing with them one-on-one, having issues, bringing you up, things that sometimes might not relate with what you're really, you know, teaching in the classrooms. But sometimes, you know, day-to-day operation, what is that like?
I mean, you know as well as I do, life can be chaotic, and especially
Good days,
when you
bad days.
when you're dealing with human beings.
Yes.
I mean, if we were dealing with math problems or if we're dealing with science problems, you know, A plus B, you know, A squared plus B squared always equals C squared. You know, 2 plus 2 always equals 4. But when you're dealing with human beings, you know, it doesn't always work out like that. You can take one human being, you could take 2 human beings, put them in the same house, you know, with the same parents, same rule structure, same environment, and they come out totally different. You know, and I mean, I'm sure you've seen things of that nature. And so in the class, say, doing something in PTAC, one thing that I may have taught in one cycle went over, you know, great. And people get it, and people are ready to absorb it, and then you do the same thing in another cycle, and it's like just flies right over their head, or you get the total opposite reaction to it. And so you have to learn how to deal with that everything doesn't just work out in neat little, you know, shapes and squares or whatever like you would like it to. I mean, then there's always, you know, you're just navigating through the care, custody, and control of, you know, a correctional facility. It doesn't work like, you know, if you're at, you know, a high school. There's other things that people are concerned with above and beyond, you know, my class, my little class. You know, there's a need for, you know, protection and safety within and sometimes that gets in with what I want to do, and that's fine. You know, that's the way it should be. However, you know, you just have to deal with and navigate through, you know, an environment that's not like any other. You know, and it's not like Oz, the TV show, or something like that. I mean, it's not to that extent, but at the same time, you just have to learn how to deal with frustrations and dealing with people. And you're dealing with, you know, a lot of individuals that have been hurt. You know, you're dealing with individuals that have experienced trauma. You're dealing with individuals who have had to manipulate, you know, their way through life in order to get the needs that their needs met. And so they bring those same, you know, those same characteristics or those same behaviors to the class. And so if you're not careful, you'll get upset. And he's like, oh, you're trying to hustle me. But it's not the case. It's just that's the way that they've had to navigate their life. And so, you know, you have to be able to understand that, you know, everybody didn't grow up just like you. And so those are some of the frustrations or some of the challenges that we have to experience.
And you threw some math out to me, and two and two is 22. Cedric, you were born in Cleveland, Ohio. What was that like?
So I was telling my class, growing up in Cleveland, you can get into whatever you wanted to get into. So if you wanted to get into a negative lifestyle, if you wanted to get into gang affiliated work lifestyle, you could get into that. If you wanted to get into, drugs, you could definitely get into that. Or you can, my friends, we were into sports. I played football. I used to wrestle in high school, and that was our thing. And that's I think is something that kind of guided me. It helped me learn discipline. It helped me learn how to deal with frustration because my football team sucked. My senior,
they weren't good.
Yeah. My football team when I was a senior was 0-10, so it was pretty bad.
They needed some work. But
but even in that, you have to still learn to come to practice. You have to learn to still navigate through that and deal with the frustration that comes with not winning, but still, do your job. Shout out to Bill Belichick.
You served as an intelligence specialist in the U.S. Army. Talk a little bit about that experience.
So, in the Navy, I served as an intelligence specialist. So, basically, what that job is to take sensitive information from other countries and just taking that information and disseminating that or giving it to whoever was in charge, whether it be an admiral, captain, lieutenant, whatever the case may be, and giving that information to them so that they can make, important decisions with, the Navy in general. So if they're going to send a ship here or if they're going to send a plane here. So what we did was we took that information that was given to us and we would kind of look at it and then figure out what we thought that, whether it was the enemy or whatever another country was going to do with that, with the information that we were given. And from that, we would give it, to people that made decisions.
So I'm going to put these three questions to you. You have a bachelor's degree in psychology from the Norfolk State University. Then you have a master's degree in community counseling from the Regent University. And then you have a master's in divinity from Harvard Divinity School. How does all these three help you in your work, in the line of work you do?
Definitely. I think it goes right alongside. The bachelor's in psychology and the community and the master's in counseling. The bachelor's in psychology basically gives you an overall understanding of human behavior and how they react to various stimuli and how they react in their environment and how their environment actually inspires them or influences them. And so the psychology kind of helped me to understand just people in general and how people, how their philosophies, their behaviors, how all of that is formed and shaped. And the community counseling, the degree in community counseling actually gave me skills into how to sit down with somebody and to like just help them navigate their own stuck places, how to navigate the issues that they're experiencing, and how to help them see it themselves and how to overcome. And then the divinity, I believe that, we're growing more and more spiritual, not saying religious necessarily, but there's, people have their own spiritual, whether their understanding of spirituality is our connection with the universe, whether their understanding of spirituality is in Christ, or if it's in Allah, if it's in Jehovah, or if it's following the teachings of Buddha. Basically, what the divinity degree, it taught me how to be able to speak to that, and understand that there is a spiritual self. And to allow a person to express that spiritual self and give them a safe place and not get, weirded out.
Yeah.
Because, my understanding or my I guess the word I'm looking for is my experience is that we get so rigid in our own understanding of our religion and our faith tradition that we don't give people a space for their own, and to express their own.
And what does success look like for you in respect of the graduates who graduate from the PTAC program and the BRI program?
So first and foremost, the hope is that, like we said, that they would have some introspection in life as far as looking into themselves and seeing. So I remember, I had a guy come to me in class one day and said, Cedric, I was getting ready to get into a fight on a unit. And then I remembered, you know, your class and some of the stuff that you said, and I just said it's not worth it. And you know, and I mean, and that's you know, that felt good. Because in the end, if we can allow somebody to think, and like somebody else, I'm a name drop a guy named Val Harris, who says that learning how to play the tape from the end, helping a person see what their behaviors will get them in the very end, and you know, and if they can maybe change their idea or change what they thought was a good idea when the ending situation was something negative. You know, if they can kind of change that and they can think differently, I mean, I think that that's a success, you know.
And my last question is, what should the general public know about the people that are in our care and custody?
I mean, to understand that they're people, you know, they're people that made a mistake, no, definitely. People that have some issues, that have experienced some things in their life. But the one thing that I've always told people, I've worked with youth, I've worked with, you know, adults that are engaged with the system. They are some of the most talented young men and women that you'll ever meet. You know, they can sing, they can write poetry, they have an understanding of life. They can draw, they have gifts and they have talents. However, unfortunately, in our society, sometimes we like to punish and then repunish, and we don't allow them to have a chance. But everybody needs a second chance, because if all of us, you know, were cut off after our first mistake, we would all be in serious problems. And so, you know, allow them, if they made their mistake. Now, that's not to say that you enable them, and that's not to say, you know, that you co-sign in nonsense. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that allow them to have a second chance. Allow them, understand that they're human beings. Understand that they are, you know, whether you believe in God or not, you know, God's creation, so to speak. And that, you know, they deserve, you know, love. They deserve, you know, a second chance, and they deserve to be successful. And I think that that's what all of them want, to be successful.
Thank you, Cedric.
Thank you.
And that's all the time we have. That was Cedric Rucker, who is the PTAC instructor, BRI coordinator. Thank you for tuning in, and this is Common Ground.